Welcome to the Disney Wedding Podcast. This show is brought to you by Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, the only guidebook and bridal organizer tailored exclusively to Disney's fairy tale weddings at Walt Disney World. I'm Carrie Hayward, and each week I feature Disney wedding updates, money-saving tips, and interviews with wedding vendors and real Disney couples. I also cover honeymoons, anniversaries, and engagements at the Disney parks and resorts. Join me now as the Disney Wedding Podcast celebrates romance at Disney destinations. Today on the Disney Wedding Podcast, I am speaking with Disney bride Kelsey Rendon about her ceremony at the Magic Kingdom after hours, with a cocktail hour at Italy Isola in EPCOT and a reception at American Adventure Rotunda in EPCOT. I thought you guys would be interested to hear how she chose these locations and how she planned everything and how it all turned out. So welcome, Kelsey.
Hi, this is so exciting.
Thanks for being on the show today. I always like to start at the very beginning and find out how you and your fiance decided that you wanted to have your wedding at Disney.
Yeah, so actually Dylan was never a huge Disney fan until he met me, and I grew up going to Disney. So I've always wanted a Disney wedding, and actually our anniversary is May 4th. It was an accident, it happened that way. And when we started like talking about getting married and stuff, so we've been together for almost 13 years this May. And we started talking about, getting married and where we were going to have a wedding. We started talking about the beach or going to Italy or something. But then one night he was like, why don't we look into having a Disney wedding at the castle? And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so crazy. So I reached out to Disney, and I kind of grew up watching the TV show. I had a mural painted in my bedroom of my own like castle. So I've always been my own like princessy type person. He's always called me his princess. My dad's always called me a princess. So when we reached out to Disney, it was like, oh my gosh. It just so happened they had a date. They only had one date available. So we were like, it's meant to be.
That's fantastic. How did your friends and family react when they found out where the wedding was going to be?
Some of us thought we were joking at first until they got the save the date. They were like, oh, you're serious. But the people who really knew me and my family, they were not surprised. They were like, of course you are. We did have some people who were like, you can do that. You can get married there. They had no idea. That was super cool. Everyone was super excited about it.
Wonderful. How many guests did you invite and how many were able to make the trip?
So we had invited 250. Some of the guests that we had invited, it was more of a courtesy. We had only really expected about 40 people. We did end up having some family issues that happened, so we had to uninvite people. But then we ended up having way more people come. So we ended up total having 54 people come, which I thought was a really good number because we thought 40 and then we uninvited people. So having 54 people was a really good number for us. Yeah, and we had only sent the save the dates out in November, so they had a very short amount of time from November to February to be like, oh, okay, this is fast.
Okay, great. Did you set up a room block for your guests?
We did. We had the Grand Floridian, which is my favorite resort, as well as we had the All-Star Movies, and so cute. We loved it. Our guests loved it too.
And how did you choose the day of the week and time of day for your event? Was it based just on when Magic Kingdom was available?
Yeah, so when we had originally reached out to Disney, they said they had one day available for 2025. If not, we would have to wait till 2026. And we always knew we wanted to get married in 2025. So that was kind of the only day that we had an option of. And we were like, okay. And they were like, and we only do the ceremony at a certain time. And so they don't do the castle weddings every day of the year. They only do them from I want to say it's January to April or something like that. So you're very limited.
So did you ever consider using another venue for your ceremony, or did you always know it was going to be Magic Kingdom?
Definitely it was only Magic Kingdom for sure. Now reception was a little different, but ceremony, we probably weren't going to do it if it wasn't at the castle.
I see. So then how did you choose your reception venue?
We had actually wanted to do Sunset Boulevard for our reception, but someone else had gotten that day. And I was really, really kind of sad about that, but it worked out because it rained on our reception day. And so whenever I started looking around, I asked some people on the Facebook group some advice, and we did talk about the American Rotunda. They were limited to a few things that we could do in there. So we were like, oh, what about the Grand Floridian Ballroom? But honestly, I hated the floor in there. So I was like, okay, let's do the American Rotunda. So that's how we kind of ended up with that. And I'm so, so glad we did because it ended up being so beautiful. And those little things that I wanted, it didn't even exist anymore in my mind during the day of. So,
Can you talk a bit about the restrictions for using Magic Kingdom after hours? I know you mentioned that your ceremony had to start at 1:30 a.m.
so they tell you, okay, it's going to be around midnight, but you don't find out the exact time till 30 days before because like it depends on the time that the park closes. So if the park closes at 11, which that day it closed at 11 p.m., so that meant we were supposed to start around 1. Well, we got a text that some guests were lingering around the park and they're not going to force guests out. So they just had to push us back just a little bit, which was totally fine.
And did you guys add the fireworks to your ceremony?
We did. Yes. Oh my gosh. Worth it. It was absolutely incredible. I came in on a carriage. We had the fireworks. We had the major dome. Oh my gosh. He carried the rings down on a glass slipper, and that was a huge surprise for everyone. Oh my God. That was a fun surprise. Reverend Kev asked for the rings. Our best man pretended that he lost the rings, and right about that time, he was patting himself down, and in comes the major domo with a glass slipper and the rings were in it, and it was just so special and a surprise to everybody.
Now, did you do a celebration with a cake cutting or anything directly after in Magic Kingdom, or did you just save everything for the reception?
We saved everything for the reception, so that was, I want to say, right after our first dances at the American Rotunda.
Got it. Okay, great. Now, did you use any outside vendors for the portions of your event that you were able to?
So I had my social media manager. She does all my content for my Instagrams and stuff. So I did bring her along with me. And Disney and Switzer Films, they were so great working with her, as well as I brought my own makeup artist from DFW with me as well. And I'm so glad I did. They were great. But Disney is very restrictive of in the parks who you can use. There's a list for videography, but I kind of already knew I wanted to use them anyways. But they do have certain restrictions who can be in the Magic Kingdom.
And how did you choose your officiant?
I grew up Methodist, so having a reverend that was Methodist was important to us. And I didn't really know anyone, so I went on the Disney Fairy Tale Wedding Facebook group and just asked if anyone knew anything. If not, we were going to just have one of our friends do it. But everyone suggested Reverend Kev, and he was great. We really liked him during our practice and stuff. He just got down to it. He knew what we were doing. He knew what he was doing. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. No, it was awesome. He really, yeah, recommend him 100 times again.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like you had the Major Domo at your ceremony. Did you add any entertainment to the reception?
We did. So we had Minnie and Mickey. They came in after I had changed dresses. They came in and it was so fun. All of our guests got to take photos with them. We did the ride add-in. So we had Guardians of the Galaxy. We did the little fireworks show. I'm trying to think what else we might have had. Oh, the confetti. We did that. That was really fun.
Did you pick special outfits for Mickey and Minnie?
We did. I had no idea that you got to pick their outfits. Oh my gosh, Dylan and I got to sit there and they sent us some pictures, and that was just so cool to get to see all the different outfits that we could choose from. So we wanted them in like a little wedding attire, and oh my gosh, our kids, you would have thought they were like little kids jumping up and down when Minnie and Mickey came out, and everyone got to take pictures and interact with them.
Do you have any menu items or cake flavors that you would recommend from your wedding?
I loved the funfetti with the strawberry, I want to say it was strawberry cream frosting. Oh my gosh, it was so moist. It was so, oh, that was so good. And the shrimp, 10 out of 10. I would do that again.
Did you guys add any events around your day, like a dessert party or a welcome party?
We did the cocktail hour right before we did the ride and right before the actual reception. And I had some issues with that, but there's nothing we can do about it now.
Just due to the rain or something?
Yeah, so when we got there, right before I got in a text that they were moving it to the second floor of the American Rotunda, and it took some time to get all of our guests, up there. Not even all of our guests. I was one of the lucky ones, I guess, because I was the bride who got both a drink and food. And it was important to make sure there was plenty of food for the cocktail hour because at my twins' wedding, there wasn't. And because of the rain, we had to move everyone all the way upstairs and then all the way downstairs to get to the fireworks show. And then when we got to the Italy Pavilion for the fireworks show, we ran into another issue with, I guess, some miscommunication on Disney's part. So that really sucked. And it kind of took away from the fireworks show trying to get that sorted out. And then our photographers were like, we'll talk about this later. We just need you in for photos. Like, let's get this going. I was like, okay. And it was really upsetting, but there's nothing we can do about that.
Interesting. Okay. Can you give my listeners a timeline of how your event all fit together?
Yeah, so it was not normal. The morning of, I had to move rooms. So I checked out of my room and moved rooms around 11, and then we went and hung out in the club lounge at the Grand Floridian. Once the room was ready, we moved rooms. I had my brother and some of my girls helping me move rooms. So hair and makeup started right at 3, and we had 12 girls for hair and makeup. So that all started right at 8 o'clock is whenever I started my hair and makeup, but I didn't realize what time it was and where our room was. It was the perfect view over the fireworks for the castle. So I ran out there and started watching the fireworks. Luckily, my makeup wasn't done yet and I was just crying. I got to enjoy it with my mom and my bridesmaids. So then during my hair and makeup, photography came in and started taking a little bit of getting ready photos. We did like main actual getting ready photos the next day. At 11 is when the limo came and picked up the guys. It came back for me at 11:30. It started raining, so my girls had to put sheets over me to protect my dress and stuff, as well as we had guests in the lobby, and we didn't want the guests to see me in my dress before I walked down the aisle. So we were just walking through the Grand Floridian with these sheets over me. And then I believe it was 11:45 when the bus got to the first resort, and then they got to the Grand around 12:30 to pick up the rest of the guests. And then they got there around 1. Kind of confusing because there was 2 different things going on, the guest and me, because we were arriving at 2 different times. I arrived at the park around 12, did my first look with my dad, did some photos with my bridesmaids, did some transition videos. I had a first dance with my dad there. Me and my dad always had this little thing that we would dance in front of the castle. We would do like rope drops, so we got to dance in front of the castle, just me and him. It was more like swaying, but it was still super special. And then they were like, okay, Kelsey, it's time. So I got to run down Main Street. I didn't have to run. I chose to run and like skip, and it was super magical. It was just me and, Pamela, who was carrying my dress behind me. And I got to meet the horses. That was so fun. And then they were like, okay. And the music started. Dylan walked down the aisle to Fantasmic, and it was a violin version. It was so fun. And I'm sitting in the carriage just crying. So we did that. Our first kiss was the fireworks. So beautiful. Right after the fireworks, we took some photos and stuff like that. And they were like, okay, we're going to get all the guests back on the buses. And I was like, okay, my dress was very, very heavy. It was like, I'm going to sit here. So I sat in my aisle and I just kind of took everything in. It was so beautiful. Dylan sat in front of me on the flowers, and we kind of just tossed the roses up in the air. And it was so nice just to have like a second to enjoy it, just the 2 of us. I don't even think the photographers were there. They had already left, and Dylan and I just sat there and had a moment to enjoy it. So then we got back probably around 4-ish, and then some people came to our room, got the kids, because we did no kids at the wedding, just being so late. some of my friends who had their kids, those kids were passed out during hero makeup, because it was so late, except for the flower girl and reindeer. Poor kiddos were so tired, but they stuck through it. And then Dylan and I had a photo shoot. I took my dress off probably for an hour, and I got a text from Corinne saying that she was on her way and she'd be there in like 30 minutes to pick me up for my photo shoot in the park. It was a very long day. I had not gone back to sleep. One of my makeup people came back, did some last second touches, curls for me, and we were back in the park. And oh my gosh, that was the coolest experience. So we were there from, I want to say it was 6 to 8 a.m. right before it opened. And oh my gosh, like that was a really cool experience, seeing that Disney does not ever sleep. Even when the park's closed, Disney just doesn't sleep. So that was really cool. After that, we went back, and Dylan and I got to sleep from, I want to say it was like 8:30 to noon, because I had to be back in hair and makeup and everything at 1. Photos came back around 4 o'clock to start doing like getting ready photos. Dylan was in there, so we kind of got some cute photos of us jumping on the bed. It was kind of like the pretend getting ready photos that girls do, because even though it wasn't the day before, it actually made it so much better because we were not in a big rush trying to get on certain times. So we could just take our time doing those fun getting ready photos. After that, then the photography took us to the chandelier to do some group photos, and then we went on the stairway. Oh my gosh, the stairway photos where I looked like a princess. It was so cool. Sorry, that was super cool to do those little photos. And then after that was done, we probably had a hour break before it was time to head back down to get on the bus to go to EPCOT for our cocktail hour. So we did the cocktail hour. To do our cocktail hour, we got there between 8 and 8:15. We got there, and then from 8:15 to 8:30, we unloaded, went to the American Rotunda, where we went upstairs, had maybe 15 minutes to get some snacks before we had to head back down for the Italy Pavilion for the Epcot fireworks show. Whenever we got there was a mess up with where we were supposed to be. They ended up booking, I guess, another wedding where we were supposed to be. So they kind of moved us over, and that was kind of a mess. And the fireworks had already started. Well, as soon as the fireworks were over is when we kind of made the announcement that we were going to go on the ride for Guardians of the Galaxy, because no one really knew that we were doing it. We got on the bus, went back, rode Guardians of the Galaxy. It was so much fun. All of my guests loved it, except for maybe 2 people who got a little sick. And then right after that, we got back on the bus, went back to the American Rotunda, and as soon as everyone was seated, I changed back into my dress. I had to do a dress change because my dress was so big, I couldn't ride it on the ride. So I changed my dress, which everyone was super cool helping me out with that. And then they did the bridesmaids entrances. Dylan and I did our first dance, and I immediately went into my father-daughter dance. We did the cake cutting, and then we started speeches and dinner time. And then pretty much we started getting the, hey, Minnie and Mickey are ready for you. I was like, okay. So I changed out of my dress and made it right back for Minnie and Mickey. So then I was back in my little short dress. Minnie and Mickey came. We did photos. And then after they, did some dancing, and then we started all of us dancing and stuff. That was so fun. So we had actually rented an extra hour because we knew that we're big dancers. We love to party and stuff. And it was so worth it because there was so much going on. We really needed that extra hour. So then as soon as our last song came on, which was the Happily Ever After song, the big cannons came out, and it was so fun and so beautiful to be dancing, just me and him, as our last dance to the cannons. And then it was time to pack up and go home. And Dylan and I were actually back at Hollywood Studios at, I think, 10:30 to 11 the next morning.
Wow.
It was a lot, so much going on, but I would do it again 100 times over. Yeah, it was incredible.
So out of all of that, what ended up being your favorite memory of your wedding?
Oh gosh. I would say, okay, there's two. Our first kiss with the fireworks and coming in on the carriage. Yeah, those were incredible memories. Oh, it was just, I get teary-eyed talking about it.
Okay, so when you guys were planning, what were some of the most important aspects of the event where you focused your attention or your budget?
So we knew we had to have the fireworks in the carriage. Those were a must. Flowers were really important to my mom and I. We love just decoration and stuff. So I would really say, besides the firework carriage, flowers and decor really was like an important thing. Yeah, so fireworks, the carriage, flowers, and then even though it's not really a Disney thing, I would say the dress and the alterations, getting my dress to be exactly what I wanted.
Got it, okay. Were there any aspects that were less important where you saved your money or just your effort?
I would more say effort. It was so easy because I didn't have to know, okay, what photographer am I going to use? Disney was like, we have our photographers. This is kind of your only choice. And I was like, easy, great, say less, and we had meetings with them. It wasn't just, oh, you're getting a random person. We got to talk to people and stuff. And the cake, I actually had your guide. So I had already known what kind of cake we had wanted because I love funfetti and I just do. So when we did our meeting, I was like, here's the cake I want. I wanted like a vintage style, like a timeless looking cake. And so yeah, that was really easy. So photography, easy. Cake, easy. The food, that was easy.
Now, you mentioned that there were issues with the cocktail hour. Did anything else go wrong or just not turn out like you expected?
So I totally understood the rain, and I was assured that morning and several other days. So at the Italy Pavilion, there's this bridge, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was very important for us to be able to be on that bridge during the fireworks show, to be able to look out at my guests, not just for the photos, but I wanted to be able to watch my guests watch the fireworks still, and I love watching fireworks. So when we got there, I saw another couple. No hate to this couple in any way. It was not their fault, but I get there and there's this couple standing on the bridge taking pictures, and I showed up and was like, "Hey, fireworks are literally starting like minutes." And there's another couple, and they're like, "Well, you're over here. We moved you over here." And I was like, "What's going on? Where's my coordinator? Where's my coordinator?" She was still trying to get the rest of the guests out of the building to go there to the Italy pavilions, and my photographer, Michael Vu, was like, "Oh my God, did they not tell you?" I was like, "Tell me what?" And he's like, "Well, just come over here. We'll talk about it later." And I guess there was just some mix up. Someone said it was the other person's thing wasn't sold as a wedding, and they had switched our areas. And I was like assured that morning that I was supposed to be on the bridge for photos. And they were like, well, they're on the bridge now, and they weren't going to kick them off. So that was really upsetting because so I did not get to watch my guests watch the fireworks because I was more in front of them and they were just all behind me. So that really sucked.
Hmm. Did Disney do anything to resolve this?
They said that they would reach out and see what happened. And I've tried to message them and they were like, yeah, they didn't do anything.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I was like, am I able to get any type of money back, or is there anything they can do? And they were like, no, it just is what it is.
Wow, okay. Was there anything that seemed like a big deal beforehand and turned out not to be?
I guess maybe the time. A lot of people didn't like the fact that it started at 1:30 a.m. and they really thought that was going to be a big deal. It really didn't end up being a big deal. It really didn't feel like it was 1:30 in the morning. Most of our guests got to sleep in the next morning because they didn't have to really technically be ready until about 6 or 7 p.m. that day. So yeah, it sucked being that early in the morning, but it didn't end up being that big of a deal.
That's good to hear. Is there anything you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
Yeah, it would probably be the cocktail hour for sure. And I get the rain, that whole thing. I had wished they had maybe said, hey, let's try to get all of our guests there sooner, because it really, having to move from one area to another really cut into our time. It's nothing we can change now, but that really sucked. And then whenever I got there and that whole mix up. So really the cocktail hour is definitely what I would have changed.
I see. Okay. Do you have any other tips or advice for future Disney couples? Maybe couples who are thinking about doing Magic Kingdom after hours, but they're not sure, it's so late at night and so expensive.
Oh my gosh, it is worth it. Number one thing is don't worry about other people's opinions. It's your wedding with your loved one. Just enjoy it. Take a look around. Oh my gosh, like having those seconds that Dylan and I got to sit there in our aisle and just be like, let's take this in because this was so worth it. And people still can't stop talking about our wedding. It was just so magical. And some of the people who were like, oh, I didn't know if I wanted to come, because it was so far. It wasn't down the road from them like most weddings are. They had to get flights or drive. And they are so glad they came. And I'm glad that they were there with us. And they were like, thank you for having us. And yes, it is expensive. I'm not going to say it's not, but it was worth every single cent that we put into it. Like, I can't say enough good things about it. It was magical. It really was magic.
That's great to hear. Well, Kelsey, I think you've offered a lot of great tips and advice for anyone who's interested in getting married or having a vow renewal at Walt Disney World, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so cool to do. And you are very knowledgeable, on that Facebook page, and your guide really helped out, honestly. I was prepared for all of my meetings and, if I had a question. So I'm thankful for you too.
Oh, I'm so glad you found it helpful. That's our show for today. I'm your host, Carrie Hayward, inviting you to join me again next week for another episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast. Past shows and tons of photos for each episode are available on my website, DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, or listen in your favorite podcast app. And for instant answers to all your Walt Disney World wedding questions, check out Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, available as an interactive ebook with continual free updates at fairytaleweddingsguide.com.